Good morning and welcome to the capitalGang. This is an unusual voice. My name is Ivan Rugambwa. I am standing in for Oscar Semoya Musoke, who is a little bit late. But we'll get going. This morning, Uganda is readying itself to host very important summits, double summits of the non-alignment movement and the G77 plus China. You have seen traffic guidelines to avoid directing you to avoid the Entebbe Expressway, the Northern Bypass, and some other major routes that direct traffic into the city. So stand guided. But to put all this into perspective, in the studio I have Moses Byarhanga. Moses Byarhanga is a senior presidential advisor on political affairs. Moses, welcome to the gang.
Good morning. Happy to be in the gang, and I think your voice is not new. Maybe where you work is new.
Ivan has captured power.
Okay, Oscar is here, but next, as he settles in,
as he takes his breath.
Yes, as he takes his breath, I also have Dixon Skateshumbwa, who is the MP for Shema, and the chairperson of Shema North or Shema Municipality, and the chairperson of the Budget Parliament. Is a member of the Budget Committee of Parliament, and you have been seeing several reports about the Auditor General's report. So we'll be discussing that and more this morning. And now I want to set a precedent of the quickest handover of power to the main man. Oscar, please.
Thank you, Ivan. I hope Moses has noted a painless handover of power.
That's what we advocate for.
Bloodless.
Well, even we were bloodless. Every 5 years, it's bloodless.
If you could have voted for him to stay on, if you had not.
If we had put out a. Good morning, listeners. I am Oscar Semoya Musoke. I apologize for coming late. I was actually on time, but I don't think they're going to fix Kamocha roads. For us, the other end, we are looking at better roads, maybe because of his conferences coming up, Moses. Isn't that the case?
Well, partly yes, and also the KCCA program of making roads better. So I hope in the next 2 years we shouldn't be having these potholes around.
Let us pray for the best.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was hoping we would have Abdul Khatum to kick us off, but looks like he's not here yet. So Katesh could kick us off. Highlights of the Auditor General's report. All of us have grabbed the biggest headline,
yes,
which is COVID vaccines being dumped and the cost of the vaccines, and this was borrowed money. So apart from that shocker, maybe there are other things that are very, very good.
Well, the Auditor General's report that was submitted to Parliament is a very huge, I think almost 600 pages of audits of the report. In summary, the Auditor General audited 162 MDAs. He did 59 statutory corporations and about 2,278 local governments. But also, in addition, the Auditor General reported that he carried out 386 special audits and investigations, 25 value for money audits, and 7 engineering audits. So it's quite a lot of work. We should be able to commend the Auditor General for the work that he has done. And that report was submitted to Parliament. As you know, constitutionally, the Auditor General reports to Parliament. And we have members of Parliament who constitute the board of the Auditor General. And that report once submitted to Parliament, it has been given to the relevant committees, and the committees will look at the details of what has been identified as some of the failures or loopholes, and then be able to present its summary, and then we can be able to debate in Parliament and take decisions. You have highlighted some of the issues that have been raised. Of course, the key one which the public has been raising concerns about is the issue of the salaries, that even now we still have, we still have that challenge that people can be paid when they are not on the payroll. No. So, I mean, they're on the payroll but not working or even deceased. It's quite a shock. But I think this time the government needs to demonstrate, once this report has been examined, the government must be able to demonstrate action, because the Auditor General, we resource that office to be able to undertake work. Government has invested in it to capacitate it, and I believe that they have done very, very good job. As a committee, I also sit on the Committee of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We interact with the Auditor General because essentially the oversight committee. We have been meeting the Auditor General. We met them last week to look at their budget framework paper, and we have been challenging them to cause an impact. We know we have traditionally been looking at, reports, qualified audit reports, but now we want to look at the impact more on value for money, especially on strategic projects, where we have acquired loans, okay? So that Ugandans, this issue of loans, debt, we know that money is being put to use and it's being put timely. One of the other key issues that came out of the report, which I think the Ministry of Finance must be able to reconcile, is the issue of the debt. While the Auditor General's report shows, debt in form of payables almost up to 10 trillion, which the Auditor General has audited, Ministry of Finance talked about 2.7. So there has to be a reconciliation, because we think that the issue of arrears, domestic arrears especially, is a very, very big issue. It is affecting the economy. If you have 2.7 trillion arrears and you are providing perhaps 200 billion every year, it will take you very many years. So where do you leave the private sector? Where do you leave people who have done contracts and paid? So there are several issues. We cannot, it's too early for us to go into the details of that report. You can just pick out a few issues. But for us, the key issue is Auditor General needs to look at more on value for money, big projects. And finally, of course, me and Oscar, we represent people down there in the local government. We have been challenging the Auditor General that at local government level, the level of impunity is beyond imagination. But every year we see the audits being done, and it becomes business as usual. So when most of the members of parliament you talk to, they'll tell you the challenges that they are having with the local governments in terms of, the projects that are done, the value for money. So we also challenged him to make sure that as we see many audits, we can celebrate the numbers of audits done, but we want to see more of the impact. We want to see cows being held accountable, not just transferred from one place to the other. And we want to see the money doing what it's supposed to do.
Just as you come off, there's you mentioned special audit. What triggers a special audit? And secondly, would the PSST or Ministry of Finance agitate for more money to pay those debts internal debts, because that can fuel the economy better.
Of course, you know, this is what we've been saying. You know, even if government decided to borrow money to pay arrears, that money will get into saturation. The suppliers of government, the people who have done contracts will get paid. They will pay their loans. They will boost their businesses, and in turn, actually, you will get taxes. So it is a cycle. So for us, the biggest concern is we continue to cripple the private sector by not paying the arrears, but at the same time, you increase the domestic borrowing from the banks. So the banks they are more interested in lending government than the private sector. Those of us who have loans in banks, we know what is happening. So it's a catch-22 situation. In fact, before we changed the law last year, but one, Honorable Katuntu knows, we moved amendments on the floor. If you supplied government goods worth 1 billion, the VAT would be 180 million. And of course, the law was such that as soon as you issue an invoice or payment, whichever comes earlier, you account for VAT. So if you supply government, you give it an invoice for 1 billion, you must go and borrow money to pay the revenue authority, even if your payment comes 2 years from now. So we actually had to cause an amendment, particularly for suppliers of government, to use a cash accounting system to ease the pain that most businesses were.
And
it has come through. It has, because we were very particular. Yes.
Katesh, and we've had running battles here with Moses on inflation and the power of a shilling. But if you get paid 2 years later, it is no longer the value of the 1 billion.
Of course, there is a time value of money, and my worry is that the arrears portfolio is growing at a rate that is
unreasonable.
Unreasonable.
Just very quickly, I'd ask you what triggers a special audit?
The special audit could be triggered by circumstances. It could be Parliament, for example. Parliament has recommended special audits in many areas.
So we could have a special audit, say, on Mabati.
Yes, Bujagari, for example, is one of them, and many others. Then it could also be government, could be the president. He could direct that detail be done. There are other audits like the one of oil and gas. As you know, they have to audit the investments because at the time of paying, the value of cost oil and could be high. So
thank you. So Honorable Abdul Katuntu is in the house. Namfi. Kasule, Marianne is in the house. Malcolm Pamizo is in the house as well. Welcome to all of them. Let's go to you, Moses. So Katesh points out two things here. For example, that internal debt is problematic, and if it is paid out, the economy could even be better. Of course, there's a sensational one, COVID vaccines expiring, and yet that was borrowed money. Are we in for some more shocks from the Auditor General's report?
Well, the report is out there. It's before Parliament. As Katesh mentioned, the parliamentary process will go on through the different accountability committees. You have PAC, you have COSASE, you have the local government public accounts committee. I think those are the three committees responsible when it comes to Auditor General's report. But some of them, like the one on on ghost workers, ghost in the public service, in my opinion, they don't have to wait for the parliamentary process. But that doesn't stop the parliamentary process, because I don't see a difference between this and the case of ghost pensioners, where people in public service were charged and I think convicted. I think they're now doing an appeal. The Ramafas and team, Obey and Ramafa and group. Because if people are on the getting on the payroll getting up 53 billion shillings a year in total. Somebody must be authorizing the payment. Somebody must be receiving. These days, we receive salaries through the banks. I hope even Parliament does so. So no, it's no longer in the, when I joined the service, you would go to cash office and receive your salary. But these days, the salary is paid through the bank. So if the money has been going to somebody's account as a worker who and they are not working, they don't belong to that institution, but they are getting money, somebody must have been receiving it. So it's something which I think CID should take on and investigate and bring the culprits. Those who are receiving the money must be brought to book, and those who are signing it off must also be brought to book. So as the process goes on. But on your question, on the COVID, it's a catch-22 situation. You remember at first year, or the cry during that time was, we have no vaccines. You borrow to get the vaccines. Some were donations. I don't know whether that costing means all the vaccines which were borrowed for money which were borrowed, or including where we had good donations. But whichever the case, there was a cry about vaccines. Vaccines came. People were now being really more or less cajoled to go and get vaccinated. At least you cannot say the people went and there was no vaccine to get vaccinated. The teams were there in the field vaccinating people.
Some areas had long lines.
Some people, yes, but at the beginning, at the beginning, yeah, at the beginning, yes. Later, there were people were not coming. So that's why I'm calling it a catch-22 situation. What would you do? Would you say, let's not get enough drugs, enough vaccines, as we see how the people's response, or have enough vaccines in the country, and then you mobilize people to go and get vaccinated? But that one, as it may. On the question of debt, this question of, yes, people say, yes, the government is borrowing from the internal borrowing, and because of that, you are competing with the private sector. Those same banks are telling you they still have money to lend out. I think there's more to do with the processes. Sometimes I engage with one of the big bank leaders in town, and this person was saying, but we have a lot of money to lend out, but we are not lending it out. I said, why? And then the person said, oh, the stringent measures Bank of Uganda is giving us, we are unable to go through them. I said, but when we started those measures and then come up, for instance,
it is an urgent thing to do.
Yeah, because for them they're saying they have money. Notwithstanding that they are saying lending government, they are not saying they don't have money to lend to Katesh or to Moses or who. Of course, for government it's easier, but it's still, even the lending government doesn't mean that all their lending portfolio is done away with. They still have money. I think there are other issues we need to go through. For instance, now if you want to borrow money, they will tell you you have to show that you have capacity to pay it, not from the project you're borrowing for. Katesh, who is in tourism, he wants to put up a hotel or expand what is having. He will say you, okay, you are borrowing this for money for a hotel. Show your capacity that today from your earnings you can pay the loan. But then why am I borrowing if I have the money? So there are some of the issues the banks need to address, but I don't think it's, yes, that the government has crowded out the private sector from borrowing. Banks still have more money. Whenever they give out their books of accounts, they publish them annually, you see they have more money to lend out than they are lending out, even including what they have lent to government. So there's more to be done. In my opinion, when you look at the Auditor General's report, yes, the auditor makes recommendations, so in some cases, and Parliament makes recommendations, but it all look at the audit of the public personnel in the public service. I work in government. I was audited. It was electronic. And my argument has always been, I'll even put this in the manifesto, one of the ways of fighting corruption is through digitalization. These days, Nafi will tell you that, oh, well, the other day when I went to get her driving permit, walked in, going through the system, he walked out with a...
No, I had a bad experience.
Wait. No, it must be.
I had a good experience.
It must be.
You can use me as the example.
I agree, it was my bad.
But I don't want to share your experience publicly.
But the point I'm raising, is that through digitalization of the issuance the issuance of driving permits, the issuance of passports, you can see how many layers of corruption were crowded out. So as we digitalize more, there's no way there's be ghost workers in the public service if you can digitalize the systems with people's fingerprints.
Any problem with this? We don't trust you with those things. You know, you digitalized telecom 3 times. When we still had that face, whatever in Chambogo, that's the first time of digitalization.
But you have just said here that you walked into the driving permit office and you got your driving.
And you know, I live in hope that they will not ask me to go back in 5 years' time. They will say we have cancelled your license because
that the permit you got is the right one.
Moses, when you work in this country, now next year we are going to. Actually, when you live in this country, I'm going to have words with Ivan after the show about my national ID.
Don't assume that you live in a different country and I live in. I know Uganda very well.
2 years from now, you might call me. Now, come bring back that license. And
how come your passport has not been recalled?
The passports have been okay for a while.
And it's through digitalization. No. Actually,
I beg your pardon.
The recalling was that in East Africa we are giving similar passports and the technology had changed and the ones which have been given.
Moses, actually,
we agreed upon.
I remember.
We all did the same thing.
You know that international, they were not going to accept those passports anymore.
You never go anywhere.
Yes.
Abdul, you missed the point.
It had time. You did go
Abdul,
time and you went there at the last
you missed the
moment.
point we are making. The passports were recalled before they expired.
Yes.
And you're saying because they could not have traveled internationally.
Yes.
So in another 2 years, they'll find something that they missed out on. You know, your national ID is going to expire. Your national ID is going to expire next.
You couldn't have gone to Dubai and use that passport.
Ivan, you're on microphone. So Namfi, whilst you're away, Ivan had stolen power. From OSM for all of 5 minutes.
I went for the main seat.
for all of 5 minutes, but it was a very peaceful handover. Yes. So on audit, what are highlights so far?
On audits, Oscar, I was having an informal discussion with Katesh before we went to the show about the annual damnation that this country interacts with whenever an Auditor General's report comes out. You have first of all to credit the methodical and thorough work of the Auditor General's office. I think Mr. Mwangali and his team have been one of those institutions that have year after year exhibited laudable excellence in the execution of their mandate. Of course, people who don't know the limits of their mandate will ask what is the impact of their work on the fight against corruption, but their mandate is limited to the fact that they do the investigations and submit their reports to Parliament, which is supposed to follow up with the action. So we must credit the Auditor General for always doing their work in a thorough manner. But for me, the highlights, aside from the COVID vaccines in the report, was the amount of money that government annually loses in tax waivers and exemptions. You know, the Auditor General's report showed that in the past year, government lost 1.4 trillion shillings in tax waivers and exemptions, and yet 22 of the 36 companies that benefited from the exemptions were performing below 50% capacity. So it shows that government has lost money, because the 1.4 trillion is lost revenue. We've been indicting URA for missing some of its revenue targets, but the URA folks will tell you, and Katesh was there, I'm sure that when he goes back to the microphone, he will confirm this. One of the biggest explanations or challenges in terms of revenue collection is the tax waivers and exemptions, because you are exempting some of the biggest companies, losing so much money, yet the targeted benefits in terms of scaling their performance and capacity and employing local people and to break even are not being realized. So it shows that from the tax waiving, there is no methodical process of following through or monitoring and evaluation of those companies that are exempted from tax to see if they are meeting the conditions for their exemption. Secondly, the report also noticed that the Ministry of Finance does not have an approved framework to guide the management and monitoring of these different tax incentives. So it appears that the Parliament and the President and the other entities have the prerogative to formalize exemptions, but there is no nationally agreed upon standard or yardstick for who qualifies for an exemption, so that it is public and predictable, so that companies coming in to invest know that there is a predictable, this is a threshold, if I'm this, I automatically qualify for a tax waiver, the exemption. Because if that standard existed, then there would also be an accompanying mechanism for monitoring and evaluating these companies to ensure that they comply with these exemptions. So I think Oscar is one of the, across Africa, by the way, this is one paradigm in which African governments lose so much money. We usually focus on money stolen by politicians and other people in terms of corruption that we see, embezzlement and all. But the biggest leakage for African countries is these tax waivers and exemptions and the illicit financial flows. So if we tightened the nose and made sure that we are very meticulous in gazetting who qualifies for tax exemption and vis-a-vis the accrued benefits from that, and therefore cut away or reduce the waivers and exemptions to a bare minimum, Uganda Revenue Authority would scale and even surpass many of its revenue collection targets, would improve our tax to GDP ratio, and then would hold these investors accountable for most of these other public amenities they get as an incentive to invest into the country. So for me, that was a major takeaway from the Auditor General's report, and of course the fact that we, beyond the report, really, as a government needs really to get serious in terms of following through on the Auditor General's recommendation. This cannot be just a body of knowledge. I mean, I think that, of course, it's as important to have a body of work from which to start any action. But the question is, do we see any action beyond the report when it is presented? And I think that is one area that we really need to be...
like when Moses says... Yes. Investigate the people receiving the money and who's dishing out those ghost monies.
That one is going to be done.
It will be done.
The president has asked CID take it up.
No.
The question, I think you tend to lose ourselves in the processes and really not take actions, because right now, Oscar, there are several reports before the there is the cooperatives report, there was Uganda Airlines, there was the NSSF, there are all these reports that the Parliament has undertaken. Now you have an Auditor General's report that shows all these leakages and shortfall and wastage and misuse of public resources, and there doesn't seem to be any confidence building action to show to the public that the government will take action. Yet the president, every address, he was also complaining about corruption and how if we fix these loopholes, then we will not care about the shortfalls in aid and donor funding.
For once, NAFCA has found areas to agree with you.
Yes.
Thoroughly.
I'm agreeing. A lot.
Honorable Katuntu, I should also say for once you've been writing copious notes to fill up a full page.
He's mentioning about African Union.
Going to give us the list.
No, African Union is coming up in a minute.
African Union.
That's coming up. But the Auditor General, for you, what stood out so far, or what stands out, or what stands out so far for you?
I think I want to answer your question, but also setting my question at the same time. You see, or before I answer your question, let me put this way. The Auditor General has had an opportunity to look at all these things in detail, but within house. That's number one. Number two, he does not have a mandate to interview anybody other than the accounting officer. For example, you cannot call anybody suspected of being involved in the fraud and get a statement from him or seek an explanation. That process now starts with the parliamentary committee. And the public is going to have an opportunity, assuming the parliamentary accountability committees handle it properly, to get it in detail. Because they are going to invite everybody involved, the accounting officer, and say, look here, what happened? And it will be public knowledge. Because you see, the public has only gotten half the story. The other half will only be gotten when the parliamentary accountability committees start.
Engaging with the
with the reports and so on. And the Auditor General has been doing this quite well. Unfortunately, sometimes this process between the parliament and then the other agencies, it dies there. And that's the biggest challenge in my view. So yes, the report is good, like many others previous have been good, but what has come out of them? I'll give you an example. When we were in Kosase, we ordered a forensic on the closure of banks. The public never knew about it. Why? Because the Auditor General could only audit systems in Bank of Uganda. Bank of Uganda was closed until we really opened it up publicly. Since that time, there has never been a bank closed. And people should not think it is by accident. Why? There are lessons, and eventually, I think government took, even Bank of Uganda picked its lessons and started doing things differently.
Maybe banks are also performing better.
No, actually, they still have the same challenges, maybe not as worse, but somehow they are being handled better, not like the other time. Having said that, Oscar, let us look at what my brother is talking about, exemptions of taxes, because that figure is just too much. Do we have a law in place? Do we have a law in place that guides tax exemptions?
Yes.
Where, because you see, once you say tax exemption to Katesh Investments Limited, it means government is paying Katesh Investments taxes. So what is the policy and what is the law? Or is it ad hoc? Because that's the biggest.
Actually, every single exemption is in the law. Should be.
That's a better word, should be.
Law and
policy.
But Nafi, hold on, let him finish his submission. We're coming to you.
I was about to ask Nancy, but I don't want to get into this conversation, that which law is this? Because what the Constitution says, there can never be an exemption except with Parliament, and then they bring, none of them, they bring them retrospectively after they have already granted or committed themselves to the taxpayer. The president, through Uganda Investment Authority and so on, he commits himself, is going to exempt you and so on. And if they have not said don't pay, then government will pay. So I think we need a clear policy on tax exemptions, because you see, if we don't raise our own resources, then the problem comes to what the Auditor General raises again, borrowing. Because we are not now getting enough revenue. And once we don't get enough revenue, we have to borrow. And we've reached an extent where the borrowing is becoming a little bit difficult to explain. Because it's very, very worrying. Very, very worrying. And we might also reach an exit when we shall start defaulting on debt repayment. And many countries like Ghana, they have had a problem. Our neighbors in Kenya here, they're in real trouble. So I think we need to do a little better. Now that the Otagen has put this thing on table, I expect the parliamentary committees, especially now, finance, the Committee on National Economy, that goes through these approvals of loans to look at some of these issues now critically. Haven't we reached a level where we cannot afford to borrow any more money and we can only use the resources we have? Cut your cloth according to your size. You know, when you look at vaccines, the issue you are raising, I mean, this was bound to happen. I'm even surprised that people are raising it as a big issue. Even in developed countries, they're the same. The vaccines which we are being given to us as donations, actually, they are the problem. They're about to expire. The other side. Because they ordered. They ordered.
No, we didn't.
They did. You see, they ordered for them and made sure that all the vaccines on the market had been booked by the developed countries. Then they realized their citizens were not very eager to take the vaccines. And those vaccines are made for a certain life period. So when they were about to expire, I said, no, now we give these ones to the African countries. So these donations, actually, it was not to help you. They were just getting rid of a vaccine which they can't use at that time.
Our Dr. Muhereza Katongole agrees with you. He says, sadly, medicines expire. It gets worse when it's a short-life medicine like vaccines.
Yes.
And then it says when treatment guidelines also change, the drugs also get affected. So
absolutely.
Seems to be run-of-the-mill.
On that, I got a comment here from Dr. Lieutenant Chove, who says that those vaccines being talked about was a grant from the World Bank, not a loan from anywhere.
Yeah, but we have to.
But grant is a grant. Grant is a grant.
Complete.
So that one, I think we need to look at a little bit holistically, not necessarily, because you see, our people, many of them resisted vaccination, like indeed the world all over. So we are going to have that sort of hitch. Not that government didn't plan so much about these vaccinations and so on. Because if the crisis had continued, Oscar, I'm sure there would be still more need. But when the crisis was lessening and lessening, then people started saying, by the way, you can live without the vaccinations and so on. Exactly. So that happened. Now you come to ghost workers. Actually, this is a national problem. And many of these civil servants have done one thing. They always focus their attention to corruption, which involves politicians. Everybody. Where there is a politician, now that's big news. And so on. And it will run over and over again. And the biggest culprits of corruption are people who handle the money. And they are the civil servants. And the public should now shift. And this goes to the parliamentary committees, really, when they're investigating, to bring this rot out. I'm telling you, if you are going to lose around $15 million.
Actually, about 6,307 employees were considered to have died. But 300.
So restart that figure, Katesh.
6,000. The Auditor General says 6,307 died, but 3,824 were not deleted on the payroll, and they were paid 23.6 billion.
You just imagine that. Yeah, but you see, even that, I can tell you, because they didn't conduct a forensic. This was not, Oscar, this was not a forensic audit that they went to details of it. They just, it was a special audit, but they didn't go to the details of it. If you go to the details of it, that figure will certainly be higher. I can tell you. And if you have either the Committee of Local Government Accounts, the Public Accounts Committee, Central, if they go into details and handle this matter properly, you'll find that that figure can even go to almost 70 billion annually. So it is up to now the parliamentary committee to go now into details, look specifically at that, of course with advice of the Auditor General, because the Auditor General sits on these accountability committees. We had asked some time back as Parliament that the IGG attaches an officer to each committee, so that we don't have to wait until these things come out and then you say, well, let's Parliament finish, then we investigate, so that they investigate real time. And that was a parliamentary resolution requesting that IGG to attach officers to each accountability committee, listen in and take up your work. So you don't have to wait for the process to the end and then you start looking for people who are dead, or sometimes even the evidence is lost. Because you see, in criminal matters, if you don't get the evidence now, even the witnesses will not be available. Either they are old or they are forgotten and so on. So time is of essence. As this process starts, I request the Honorable BYABAKAMA to attach officers to these committees, and they follow real time and start looking at some of these issues. Many of these chief administrative officers, many of these permanent secretaries are guilty on this, because no money can be paid out as a salary without their, I mean, they are the paying officers and the human resource officers.
Katesh kind of mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll end by appealing to the accountability committee to be thorough and to be professional. The biggest problem we sometimes have in the Parliament, when we politicize some of these issues, then you lose, you get the eye off the ball. But if they can be professional, I'm sure the country stands to benefit from it, other than trying to do politics.
Can you put an advisory role to the committees?
Well, even what I'm saying is an advice. So, some advice.
Through his 20-year experience in Parliament.
Actually, not 20 years. Where are you taking the other year of me? Some more than that.
Malcolm, as you come on microphone, I have Professor Sam Sejaka says crowding out the private sector is through raising the risk-free rate, and that's the problem. And the risk-free rate is the rate at which government borrows. If you say borrow at 16%, then the private sector must add a risk premium, which makes the borrowing very, very expensive. So the issue is not lack of money in banks, it is a pricing issue.
Actually, it is the cost of that money. Because you may have money, but at what cost? And if Katesh Investments wants to go and borrow at 26%, really, is it worth it? And where is he going to invest that money so that he has a return on investment?
But I would reply to Professor Sejaka. If the free risk is 16%, it's only government which can qualify to that. Not many other private sector people will qualify for the free risk. They will still get a risk rate.
But that's exactly what you are saying.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Yes. That once you...
The money is there.
No, the problem is not the money being there, but what is the cost of that money?
And the process of
and
getting
that's the
money.
point Professor Sejaka is raising. The money could be there, but is it reasonable for me to go and borrow that money? Does it make a business sense for me to borrow that money?
Is quite painful. So, but then again, we have money, because when you look at government expenditure, it shows Uganda has money really.
It's very interesting.
We have some money, but don't say we have
I recently
real
read a report on performance of economies in Africa, and I think Uganda was ranked probably 4th or 5th best performing economy in Africa in terms of foresight, 2024 into 2025.
Has Namfi had that?
The problem is
don't celebrate that statement until you complete.
the problem is that these are statistics that Moses will happily quote when they appear to be in his favor, and then when the very same institution,
I bought him a book,
quotes,
but hasn't given it to him yet.
When the very same institution quotes figures that are not in government's favor, then it is all lies. They don't know what they are talking about. But I think that, and this might be a bit cynical, but I think that I wonder how Uganda actually continues to be a stable economy, a going concern of sorts, because I think one of the things that this report highlights is also a real disconnect between the planning, the implementation, the execution, and eventually the monitoring and the audit. There's a real disconnect there, because in some instances the figures just don't match, and we gloss over that and say we shall go with this particular figure because they did the audit. For many years, we flatter to deceive that when we have this Auditor's General's report come out, the different accountability committees will sit, will scrutinize. We've discussed here how some of these have led to nothing. We are still waiting for results. Yes, the process itself is part of getting there, because as the Honorable Abdu has said, you have a lot more information that comes out during these investigations. But where do they actually lead? And at what point do we then say we have made progress? Do we go back to look at the last 10 years of the Auditor General's reports and say the figure of ghost workers was at 2,000, it's now at 1,000, 10 years later it's at 500, and that is progress? Or do we continue to do the very same thing, task the very same people to do the very same investigations, and come out with reports that we then will herald and say they have done some work? So it's really challenging. I think I'm also really taken aback by the bit around the public debt and how much the government loses in terms of the taxes. Honorable Abdu was asking about the legal provisions around tax exemptions. I think it's section 21 of the Income Tax Act that provides for exemptions. There's that embedded in there on the 10-year tax exemption for local investors, for foreign investors, when you're investing $300,000, I think, or more, or something like that. There's another quieter provision in the tax, in one of the other tax laws that provides for a more discretionary approach, where government commits to pay VAT, the procedure code, the tax, and that's where the problem is. That one is very discretionary. It is often abused. No, but when you point to Abdu as having amended it, Moses, Abdu is one person who probably even objected to the amendment, but the 75% of people who receive under midnight money and things like that are the ones who then go and say yes to everything. And then who go say yes to everything, and we have a law on the books that really is making us lose money, and I want us to really look at it in this case. Yeah.
I think the question is not about the law. What the report also raises is the fact that beyond the law, the Minister of Finance, which is in charge of monitoring those things, does not have a framework for monitoring and evaluating the efficacy and effectiveness of those,
which is part of our bigger problem, because we are good at putting the law on the books, and as long as it serves the purpose. Yeah. So you have legal protection, but then
the majority of those exempt companies performing below capacity, which means they are not, government is not getting the benefits envisaged in the tax exemption and waiving.
Exactly.
The law, as I was saying, stops at the exemption. Thereafter, what happens?
And that's that is this a framework. A framework.
What happens is in the law. What happens after that?
Malcolm, complete.
Yes, and I think when you bring it down,
yes,
when you bring it down to and I think Oscar, I think Moses at one point tried to intimate that you and him live in the same Uganda.
No, it is not.
And figuratively speaking, yes. cars.
But
with different
the same brand,
but with different
models,
but with different tax liabilities.
And
one car is paid for.
But going with the employee at Katesh Investments, since we are going with that investment company, when you look at how this tax exemption,
yes,
that this 1.4 trillion that is where we are leaking on an annual basis, and how it affects service provision, because when you talk about it in terms of lagis, it becomes difficult to see the impact, the real impact of this money. But then when you go down to see the hospitals that are failing to get medication because 1.4 trillion is being lost, because a certain company came and said we can invest, and they have not invested 7 years down the road, then you begin to realize the actual impact on the everyday Ugandan. Moses, you and I will sit here and debate. We'll sit here and debate those big figures. But when someone is unable to get life-saving treatment, or even get involved in an accident on a road that has potholes because there is not enough money, and that's what KCCA says, that there's not enough money to fix all the roads at any one point in time. I think that is really the crux for me.
Okay. We're going to go for a break, and during the break, I'll put to Ivan here, show him which cars in this car park that pay tax and which don't.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM. Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. I'm trying to tell people that we are on air. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on air. So, Namfi, some unspeakables during the break. Let's keep them there. So,
as Oscar has pointed out, Ivan here is also a beneficiary of these exemptions on his car, and we need to investigate whether we have value for money from those exemptions of Ivan's car. So we'll get there. At least Oscar's car is not under these exemptions. Oscar, I think what I've listened to everybody, and like every Auditor General's report, we discover every year that there's a lot of rot in government, and yet every year nothing is done. Not even just from the Auditor General's report. Moses here came 2 weeks ago and was convincing us that our debt was manageable. I would like to quote the Auditor General, who told us it is not. And henceforth, you will not use the numbers to lie to us. That it is manageable. The Auditor General himself has come and said it has tripled to over 90 trillion from 2019. It has tripled. You understand? So when the Auditor General comes up and says it is worrying, we have to pay attention to that. Because for me, the worst part is what we even spend this money on. If we got this money and spent it on vital, critical aspects of public expenditure, I would understand why. It's like your parent going to the bank and you're worried that your debt at your home is increasing, and then he goes to borrow money to buy a very expensive car for your grandmother and grandfather who doesn't know how to drive, who did not ask for this car, who is going to incur expenditure to even run this car, so they have to pack it. Because most of these people who they gave these cars, the former speakers, what are the chances that they can even afford the fuel in these cars?
The government is providing fuel.
Even the driver.
Even the driver. They are being paid.
And
But
the tax.
For a country whose borrowing is at 96 trillion, is this critical enough for us to invest in it? Look at the size of our parliament. And I think one of the things we've glossed over at this table is where does the impunity when it comes to corruption comes from? We forget that the country is run by the chief corruption officer. Because the president condones corruption again and again. Because he's the most corrupt member of this government. Moses, you spoke, let me speak.
No, this is an abuse.
Because he's the most corrupt member of this government. This week, yes, he is. The other day, he told Betty, do not touch the army guys. Do not touch their wealth. Do not investigate them. This week alone, Chitutu failed to turn up at IGG. And do you know what she was angling for? I want to see the president and beg him to let me go. Because again and again, the president has let the worst corrupt individuals go. Earlier last year, we saw the Mabati saga. Up to now, these people are still there. Look at Namuganza. Look at
she didn't take
went for 6 billion. No. That's a different case. I'm saying people who should leave and shouldn't and not fit to govern. Look at Betty Amongi, and yet she's still running the show. Eventually, she got her 6 billion that she was. So when we sit here and pretend that we're going to get rid of corruption, when the person at the helm of government, when the person running this government is the engineer, the chief engineer of corruption, is the chief campaigner of corrupt people to get away with corruption. Why is he back
whispering the words?
You understand? So when we look at it from that angle, and then we pretend every year, Akuna Muchezo. Look at PDM. What didn't we predict?
Patricia, the producer just...
Auditor General's report found over 600 circles.
Let Patricia give you some water
yes.
and you calm down. Because...
Oscar, I think we need to clarify that the president may be faulted for not sanctioning hard against the corrupt. No, but to refer to him as the chief corruption, as the chief corruption officer,
and you condone it,
as the chief engineer of corruption. That is
the president. No.
But who is worse than him?
No, Oscar.
Moses mentioned one officer in government who is worse than him.
Nafi, Moses takes umbrage against your opinion.
To say the president is the most corrupt person in this country.
He is.
And
it's a matter of opinion. Moses' opinion is that he's not.
The controller of the program just condones it.
How did I condone it?
How did I condone it? It's like saying now you are responsible. You are the chief enabler of NAFCA's
of the program.
Let me enable Moses to make a comment on it.
This is one of the reasons I had given up coming back to the gang. And with this, I want also to say, I don't need to come back when you come here. Somebody says the president is the most corrupt person in the country.
Is he not?
Who
is worse than him? Moses mentioned one name which is worse than him, and then we will go with that person.
We should continue.
What has indicted the president? You see, corruption is not a function.
I think Ivan has done it better.
I hope UCC is listening in. I hope you is listening in, and they should take action on this.
As long as the corrupt individuals are investing in the country.
The Capital Gang.
Go on, Nafi.
So I'm on air?
Yes.
So can I withdraw my statement so that Moses is not upset?
Many people can get upset. So Abdu, we are on to our second topic.
So Moses,
and
Oscar, I had other points.
No. We are done with that one.
Okay.
So I had invited you, Abdu, as the first topic to put you as the guest on your experiences with the speakers conference. And also
I sit in my common seat.
No, we can designate now that as the guest seat. So since we have been talking about IGG and everything, I don't know, let's start with a cheeky one. Will you be declaring anything as having been the chair of a speakers conference?
Well, it talks about value. What I have, I don't think it hits the threshold which is required to be declared. But I must congratulate the Parliament of Uganda for having successfully held the 27th Conference of Speakers and Presiding Officers of the Commonwealth. It was one of the most successfully organized conference. And in my view, it gave what we call a dry run for NAM and the G77 plus China. Many colleagues who are in the organizing committee of NAM were really following what we are doing. We hosted them at the same place. We had a good turnout. of of 33 speakers and presiding officers. We could have had more, but a few countries expressed their displeasure about the law we passed, and that they went on some campaign to dissuade or persuade other countries from not attending, and that is Canada, New Zealand, and Malta. The United Kingdom, who is supposed to be the patron of the Commonwealth, wrote my friend Sir Linsley, the Speaker House of Commons, wrote and said he's unable to come, but he didn't give reasons.
And didn't send a representative?
No, they sent the Deputy High Commissioner. They degraded, actually, their delegation to the Deputy High Commissioner here. And I respectfully decided that they were not going to be accredited. Respectful, of course. But obviously, we did our best, and all the speakers were happy. Some of them actually decided to change their itineraries and left after 3 days, going outside to Jinja, the source of the Nile, going to the equator, and a few other places outside Kampala, which we hadn't organized, but somehow they came to know of it and they said, let us take it. Like the Speaker of India, of Barbados, of Guyana, of Sri Lanka, and so on. We think the lessons have been got, and Uganda is lucky that this month to organize 3 international meetings of that magnitude. It shows really that we are not a banana republic. There's a little bit of international confidence within our country, and people are willing to come. When you look at the numbers of the heads of state coming in for NAM, I think it has hit 30 so far, heads of state, or around 29, 30. And you're going to have vice presidents and the prime ministers coming to attend NAM, and then thereafter the G77 plus China. How does Uganda, first of all, benefit? I think that's the all-important question. One, whenever you expose your country to this international community, they come and look at this country, and eventually they will have to attract, we are just showcasing our country such that we can be able to attract more of those who can come for business, but also those who can come for leisure, what you people call tourism. And in this world today, the Kateshis know tourism is one of the biggest foreign exchange earner in many countries. Uganda is such a gifted country, I'm telling you. For those of us who have traveled the entire world, there are not as many countries as beautiful as Uganda in terms of weather and even the hospitality of the people. If you look at what the speakers, the messages they are sending, oh, that was very good, oh, you people, you are very hospitable, and so on, we can make strides in attracting foreigners to our country, tourists to our country, but including business people. Whenever you have a conference like that we've just said, and these two coming, one, there is going certainly to be a lot of benefit to the population, business people. I'll give you an example. In Uganda, I don't know, fuel alone, consumption of fuel. I don't know how many petrol stations does government have. But all the fuel being consumed, transporting all these people, is certainly going to the private sector. Let us look at the hotels. Many of these hotels, for us, we used mainly the Munyonyo, and the speakers were paying for themselves and delegates. They were paying for themselves. But even all the hotels around Munyonyo were all fully booked. Now, with NAM, it's even going to be more because the numbers are big. I'm sure it will be Sheraton, it will be the 3, including 3 stars actually, Fairway and so on. So the country can really benefit. And these people come. I was a little bit cheeky with one of the speakers when I was bidding farewell. I asked him, tell me how much money have you spent? He laughed, said, are you auditing me? I said, no, because we have become so close. We are really very good friends, and we had known each other before. And he said he had spent over $7,000. Just one person during his stay here. So just imagine if you have hundreds and thousands spending that sort of money here, it's a lot of money coming to the economy. The food going to be eaten. People who are selling small things like art crafts and so on, we took many of them to National Theatre, and there's an art craft shop there, and then Uganda Road, and they were buying all those sort of things in big numbers. When we took them to work in Entebbe, by the way, I invite folks to go and visit the Uganda Wide Education Center in Entebbe. Those guys have done a very, very pretty
most schools
job.
We take children.
I know. Actually, the schools, you are their biggest clients.
Yes.
And so on. They have even done a floating restaurant. We've advised them to improve it because it wasn't in a good state, but we hired Sheraton to go and improve it. I'm telling you, it's one of the places where you want to have a dinner, a bridal lunch, and so on. It's not one of the usual restaurants you have. So there is a lot to show you to these people, and to me, as long as we sort out our mess here, because we have a little bit of mess here, we continue sorting out mess here. This country, we can attract more people and more money coming into this economy. So,
and a personal experience, what stands out for you?
The level of organization, Ugandans, if they come together, we have talents. I saw these young men and women involved in protocol. They were headed by my brother, Kateshia. He was the chairperson of the subcommittee on protocol. But getting all these visitors from Entebbe, we attached each and what we call the CATCP to each and every speaker and the protocol officer and indeed security officer who are SFCs. But I can tell you, everybody was like, oh my God, these guys know what they are doing. There's big professionals in this country, and Katesh's committee or department.
Katesh is a former president.
Was one of the very best. And let me tell you what, they would wait for these guests coming on different flights, 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 1, they were not sleeping.
So even the speaker himself.
Yeah, so picking them from the airport, checking them to the hotels, making sure by the time they wake up in the morning, these guys are there like they did sleep the previous night, and staying with them until after 3-4 days when we are bidding them off. Really, I'm so happy, and Katech, congratulations. You made us proud.
Okay, thank you very much. I must tell you, we did speak at large about the conference last week. With people, anyone who wants to add on can add on, but Katesh, with you, move us on to the one for this next week.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that, when I was telling my colleagues in the ministry yesterday, when I see sometimes we are grappling with the budget, looking for resources, I go back and reflect and I say, how can we not get it to see the opportunity that is available in tourism that can actually solve our problems? Because in 2021, I think we had about 500,000 arrivals. Uganda was ranked 69th in the world in terms of tourist arrivals. The number grew to about 800,000. I think that if we focused properly and strategized, Oscar, this country should be receiving, we can target and purpose to receive at minimum 3 million tourists a year.
Because I was doing 800,000.
Yes, I was talking to the speaker of Maldives. That tiny island receives on average 2 million tourists a year.
Yes.
I don't know if
well, I've been there twice.
Yes, I've not been to Maldives.
I've been there twice.
But they tell you the amount of revenue that they are getting out of that. Because many people here don't understand the supply chain of tourism. The moment a tourist lands in Entebbe, we start earning from the person who has brought the vehicle to pick, the garage, the petrol station where they are going to fuel. If they stop at Java's, in Entebbe or anywhere, the meals. And I said it on this show last week that if you have 3 million tourists sleeping one night, you are assured of selling minimum maybe 3 million eggs every day for breakfast. And when we talk of trickle down, this is what we are talking about. We are talking about PDM. I have said it here before that if I have 5 million eggs produced in my region, where would they be offloaded under PDM? We must find a market.
In fact, COVID showed when places were closed, people were desperate to sell chicken and eggs.
Exactly.
It was a big problem.
So for me, I think the challenge is on.
Yeah.
We have got the facilities now. We have a very big conference. We have the airport has been expanded very well. It can receive the numbers we want. Now we must get it on the strategy. If you look at the tourism development program under PDM and the allocation we have put, and the fact that we have different people who have a role to play in promoting that program, but we still operate in silos. We must up our internet in the parks. We must have water in the parks. We must have
toilets.
The country must be marketed.
Nita did a great job for us.
Yes, the country must be marketed. The primary level of marketing tourism is to start from marketing the country. I went to Turkey. I met the ambassador last year. We went to visit a few people. And they said, you also have gorillas. Can you imagine? They are asking. Then we said, we do. Then they said, where can we find information? They opened the website of the Ugandan embassy in Ankara. Not updated. It's like the last update was like 10 years ago. And you know that all the updates of the embassy website must be done by the Minister of Foreign Affairs locally. So we need to up our game in terms of marketing. Now we must aggressively build on these visits that we have. I understand the president confirmed we are hosting IGAD after this. We have the capacity. We have the organizational capacity.
Yes.
Now it is about marketing and giving people targets in foreign missions to look out for workshops, to look out for international conferences, so that we get as many people visiting Uganda and spending dollars here.
So thank you on all that. But go to NAM.
So NAM.
By the way, I should tell you, even police, they are getting jobs because our road, it is now fully armored road.
First of all,
then we have also benefited. They put maybe more, but we've also benefited from lights.
First of all, Oscar, every time we have a conference as big as NAM, of course it gives us an opportunity to up our game in terms of the infrastructure. So there has been a lot that has been done by government. We may say, okay, we are doing things at last minute, but at least they are done. Number two, last year we received about six travel advisories. Of course, from these imperialists who think they can put pressure on Uganda.
So they are not going to do that this time with the NAM and this 77
the NAM
plus
is
China.
a very big. It's a big vote of confidence in the country. So for you to think that you can issue advisories not to travel to, I think they are not informed. So it's a time for the country to. Yes, it is time for us to have a role at the global stage. I understand we will be chairing NAM for 3 years, and of course G77 for 1 year. So it's an opportunity for us as a country to basically play a critical role in geopolitics, but at the same time, visitors are coming. They are going to experience the beauty, and every dollar that is spent. Remember, our per capita income, Oscar, is almost 1,000, right?
Yeah.
So if someone comes in and spends $7,000, he has spent
Let's go to
about
Moses here.
Annually.
Both Abdu and Katesh have sold on the tourism. You tell us, what's the business of NAM this time round?
Well,
what are they coming to discuss?
The theme. I need to check the documents on the theme, but somebody can Google and find it out. Basically, NAM.
And I should say, following Katesh, I looked up Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities. That one is updated.
This one is updated. But
this one is updated.
In the different embassies, we need it up again.
NAM is the membership of NAM is countries. The title is non-aligned. You know, at the beginning when it was started, there was either you have during the Cold War, pro-West or pro-Russia, and China at the time, and later China. These are countries came out and said for us.
The smaller player there.
Yeah, but it was between Russia, then Soviet Union and America, pro-West or pro-Russia. So this came out and said, no, we don't need to be pro either. We need to be pro ourselves. It's a very big grouping. I think that the second biggest grouping after UN. They meet every 3 years on 9 aligned issues. But today the most driving factor is trade. In every meeting you can have, trade is the most important issue. How can we trade with each other? You see, you are talking about travel advisories. They also affect trade. So I want to join Abdu and Katesh to say that this is a very big sign of confidence in Uganda. The leadership in Uganda as a country, the leadership in Uganda. Otherwise, why would you give the chair? Because see, NAM, or in one of these international organizations or meetings, when a country is hosting, the chief executive of that country becomes the chair. So it is also a vote of confidence in the president, like in our case, the president of Uganda, the country, that we can come there. It will be difficult to have such a meeting, say in Somalia, where there is insecurity, or many other countries, but all that is confidence that that country is secure enough, we can go there. As Abdul was saying and Katesh, we need to, it's a good exposure of the country. If people can come and then stay longer in Uganda, those are going to export. Now, the international media is all focusing on Uganda. In the next at least 1 week, they will be looking at Uganda. The speakers who have just left, I'm sure each one of them came with press teams. So those press people who are reporting back home, I haven't been looking at the papers in those countries, the media. I'm sure they were reporting about you, their speaker being in Uganda and what's going on. So some people come to know about Uganda. Somebody in Maldives may never have heard about Uganda, but when the speaker of Maldives is in Uganda, with their press team reports about him or her, and that's good exposure. On business, yes, there are two other things. Most of it has been talked about, the money coming in through tourism. But also, I've been talking about the stability of Ugandan currency. All this money coming in within this month, you check by end of January, the price of $1 is going to be lower. In fact, people like Namfuka, my friend here, who have some money, who can invest in money and other things, this is the time to buy $1 when it is low, and then maybe sell it at the time when it's high. There are those financial advisors who do exactly that. The timing when the price is low, they buy. When the price is high, they make some money.
You are now in speculation, Moses.
It's not speculation. It's business. It's business. It's business. It's business. But it's business. It's a business. So it's a good exposure for the country. The other day I was talking about 2 days ago to an investor who has invested both in Uganda and in Kenya, and he was talking about he's in the dairy sector. He was saying that many African countries, they have been exporting dairy products from Uganda to some African countries. One I don't want to mention, but he was saying that it now is taking 9 months to pay them for what you have supplied today. They will supply you in September because they don't have dollars. It was in that country, and it's a very big country. Now, the advantage of this, and Uganda is, in fact, he was mentioning that Uganda is like the only African country today where if you supplied, they can pay in the dollars tomorrow. Many other African countries have been rationing their dollars, and this is a fact. And when I say it here, Oscar comes and says, "Oh, Moses, we're arguing here," but this is a fact. So matters you can cross-check. Many other countries have been rationing dollars. I remember when Abdul was in one of the neighboring countries some time back, posting on our forum, saying getting dollars from that country was very difficult. In Uganda, you walk in and walk out with dollars, partly because of the inflows from gold now, which are high, inflows from coffee, which are high, now tourism, which has resurrected after COVID, which is high. So it's good for our country.
I agree with you, Moses. Every time I disagree with you, it's like you speak PDM and then you speak dollars. But that's always where my fight is with you.
Yeah, no, it's not. There's
so
no fight.
When you say PDM person is going into a forex bureau, we fight over that.
If a PDM person,
when you give that as a big example,
if a PDM person
and you are the author of PDM, but you are now telling them dollars.
No. If a PDM person,
Malcolm, that's my running argument with
see a PDM person is
Moses.
Wait, a PDM person is say planting coffee. That coffee, part of it is we drink it here as Star Coffee, but the majority of it goes outside the country, is exported. And in the last coffee year, we got as Uganda $940 million US. So PDM is related to $1. The PDM and dollars related.
Now, I should tell listeners that I have these battles with. You asked me if I live in the same country as Moses. me, I live with PDM.
You live in the same country, you drive the same car.
No. I don't live in the same country with Moses. Nancy, you're on microphone. You're on microphone. NAM is here, benefits, and people like Nancy are the ones that benefit from NAM anyway.
Oscar, tell me, I don't want to miss out.
Negotiating deals with these.
With the ambassadors and so on. But
Oscar,
yes.
I think
let me assist in Africa. China is coming. Need I say more?
No. Sir. Yes.
I've since then withdrawn.
Oscar, it's a good opportunity for us as Ugandans because NAM as NAM, I think its relevance as an organization extinguished in about 1990 when the Cold War wasn't there. But it has tried to evolve to gain more prominence and relevance in the last few years, especially when with the weakness of the UN and OAU, African Union. The theme this year is deepening cooperation for shared global affluence. That in itself, I think, will tell you what these countries want to achieve. Most of these countries, members of NAM, feel a certain disenfranchisement from the global affluence. They feel that the Big Seven, the G7, have hogged the prosperity that should be shared by all. The rest of us are like an afterthought, to be fair, in the current global status quo. We even our views, our opinions, look at what is happening in Palestine. And because Israel is supported by the US, it doesn't matter how wrong it is, it ends up doing whatever it wants, even when it goes against the core beliefs of the West, that is democracy, blah, blah, blah. So they sing one thing, they practice another, and now the other countries of the world have realized that the West actually doesn't have their interests at heart. And I'm glad we are getting there. So conferences like NAM are not here for what NAM was created for, not to be aligned, but now have evolved to try and make us countries who are disenfranchised by the big bad wolf that is the West and its partners, come together and see what we can do together. Unfortunately, when many poor people come together, it's very hard for them to have results. But we can take, and that is why you see, as Uganda, we are emphasizing the periphery advantages of this, not the core. Even Moses will not tell you what NAM is going to achieve at the policy level of NAM, but will tell you that we'll get tourists, hotels will get income. When G77 comes, it's a good month.
In your opinion, we will individually benefit.
I'm yet to see how I'm going to benefit, and
no, I mean as a country. As a country,
yes, we will. Every time you have visitors, even at a personal level, at the very least, you clean up. And we've cleaned our city a bit.
You tell your children to brush teeth.
They brush teeth, you cut their hair. If only for that, we will take that.
No, at school we teach them Sunday best dressing. You know,
exactly, Sunday best dressing. The meal is better that day. You know. So if that is all that we can get from it, because I don't see any long-term advantages that we can draw from this, but the short-term I see, and then maybe the long-term advantage I see is that we are learning to host these events and to harness these opportunities. So in the beginning, as you can see, we are just finishing some of these roads. Some of them are not even finished. They sent a program for the road shortcuts and the roads to use. It doesn't have dates. It doesn't. So it's a teething situation, and as time goes on, will be better. And then maybe we can take more advantage of these kind of forums.
Okay, Malcolm.
Yes, Oscar.
Yes, NAM is coming.
And it will go.
Better to have Ivan speaking last on. It is safer to have Malcolm speaking last on the topic than Nafi or Malcolm. But Nafi has spoken better than last week regarding the conference, first because there's a country coming.
I still maintain.
Okay. Go on.
Yes. I think for me, what quickly comes to mind as we prepare for this is and as I listen to the conversations around the benefits, is NAM and G77, are they part of our growth strategy as a country, or are they accidents that happen and we are taking advantage of? When you go as far back as Chogam, you get this. You got the sense then that was purely an accident that happened. People took advantage of it, like the way a truck falls on the road, and some people come with jerry cans. Some people take the mobile phones, others just take videos, and everybody walks away with something. Whether that something they have walked away is of benefit to them or not is something else. When we talk about the fringe benefits that come from NAM, and the Honorable Abdu has been very clear on the ones that came from the Speakers Conference, they are very welcome. But where does that plug into a sustained effort towards growth? If we talk about getting us to 3 million, Katesh, 3 million tourists, is NAM clearly plugged into that effort? Or is it something that happens and then we take advantage of it and see where we fall?
This is one of the, in tourism, what we call MICE, meetings, incentives, conferences. So NAM being one of the big conferences is fits into the tourists under MICE.
Yes.
There are other tourists who come primarily for for trekking, for luxury travel, but this is very important because it goes directly into our capitals here. And
I wish I was hearing this from the Ministry of Tourism. Let me.
Because they are not here.
Yeah, continue.
Let me tell you why. Because
I have their website. We'll see if they have said it.
You feel that this is a pillar of the effort towards growing tourism in Uganda. That when Honorable Adonia is out there lobbying for Uganda to take on a certain presidency, it is part of the broader strategy of growing tourism. And therefore, you won't have us finishing beautification of the city overnight for the following day. You won't have us completing road construction in the middle of the night because tomorrow NAM is beginning. You won't have NAMFI disturbed by the diversions because they are being rushed out since NAM is starting tomorrow. That for me is where I find that it feels like an accident that occurs, and we take advantage of. Yes, there are some bad things that happen in accidents. There are some people who benefit from accidents. When you think about what post-NAM might look like, Oscar, I would like to offer myself to come here and debate or discuss one of the...
Can I help a bit? Well, you see, there are many things that go on during these international meetings, but they never come for public discussion. For example, as we talk now, I know you have trade delegations already here. They have not come here as accidents. No. They have come here to see opportunities. And many businessmen have been invited to be engaged in this what we call meetings, trade meetings, and so on, even before NAM itself starts.
Yes.
You know, during the conference, the speakers' conference, we had so many side meetings, and they had nothing to do even with what we are discussing, but they were purely those sort of issues you are talking about. I'll give you an example. NAM itself and the G77 constitute 80% of the world population. 80%. If this 80% of the world population come together and just do trade amongst themselves, just imagine that. But you know, you will not have that as you are thinking it. You know, but this certain the benefits that accrue from countries knowing to each other, discussing the challenges they have. But, if you're talking about security, I'll give you an example. When the G77 was created, and you had the global south and the global north divide. For us, we are in the global south. Do you know what's happening? The new international order, the geopolitics, was about the United Nations and the Security Council to guarantee peace and security. Does the Security Council, as you see it constituted today, guarantee peace and security of the world? No. Take, for example, what's happening in Ukraine. Russia is part of the Security Council. It is busy bombing Ukraine. You talk about what's happening in Gaza. The U.S. is part of the Israel bombing Gaza. But how can those sort of people guarantee international peace and security? And these are the sort of issue when you bring guys who are not part of that, you know, structure. Come here and say, look here, these guys can't guarantee even our peace and security. It will be us ourselves to do it.
Abdul, let me also put in a word for you, because you are talking different subjects. On all the things you have mentioned, Malcolm does not disagree.
I don't dispute them.
He has said to you.
You mean these are not being discussed?
No. But he said already.
No, he said whatever is happening accidents. That's how I saw it.
No. He agrees. Yes, he has agreed with you on everything. He's just saying, how have we prepared for this? So maybe the organizers, maybe Moses needs to say, in year 2 of NAM, we are going to be doing this. If Malcolm has not felt that we were ready for it, and Moses has said we are going to be there 3 years. So are you saying to Moses, tell us, okay, what will happen next year?
That's what I'm saying, and not just after, but there's before and there's after.
On the accident, first of all, such meetings are lobbied for. All the 120 countries, I don't know how many out of 120 member countries have hosted, but many would want to host, and even those who hosted before would want to host again. So it's a lobby.
But all he's telling you is prepare for it.
No, yes, it's a lobby. So
that's all he's saying.
It was lobbied for. Uganda was accepted, and as I said earlier, that becomes a vote of confidence in your country. Now we the readiness. We didn't have enough conference facilities to host over 2,000 people, and yes, then the government came out and said, let's partner with someone at the Commonwealth, who can put up for us the conference facilities. Now that we have the conference facilities which can host such a big number of people which you didn't have before, it falls in what Katesh was saying, that for future conferences, even the ones which are not, Uganda is not going to chair. Like you have had AIDS conference, these international conferences, they will say there is some destination called Uganda, where they have capacity to host so many people.
You've already made the point, and we agreed with you. Hand back to
in East Africa. I don't know how many. I don't know which conference in East Africa which can host about 6,000 people other than Uganda now.
Malcolm, I'll help you a little bit. Ivan just tapped Nafi on the shoulder. I said shoulder, not elsewhere. Shoulder. But
and I'm just quick to
but Malcolm, I want to support you in simple terms. That if you have visitors, like tomorrow we are going to have visitors in Chigo, so we are going to start mopping the house today, okay? Then we shall rearrange the flower pots and everything. So tomorrow that visitor will walk in, and that's all he's saying.
And that's
you have
my
not
point.
refused all these
the other
principles.
things, and they're wonderful, and we're going to benefit.
Yeah.
But and for me, that is where my worry is. That's where my anxiety comes from. That in the lack of preparedness to host, and by preparedness I don't mean that we're not prepared now, but the progress towards preparedness has been rushed and very similar to what happened 15 years ago when we did CHOGM. That's where I'm coming from. That the post-CHOGM was such a shambolic debacle because of how we had progressed to that, how we had prepared for it. So have we learned from then that, because even then we were beautifying the night before. We are doing the same today. Where are we thinking that these 3 million people we're trying to target? Who came for NAM and saw a beautiful?
We have lights.
They saw a beautiful road when they came in for NAM, and they come 2 years later and they find that road has potholes. Are they going to come again, or are we? Yes, they're going to come again.
Thank you.
Or do we have a sustained plan to prepare for these events and be able to support that infrastructure that we prepared post those events?
Let me get Katesh wanted to say just a sentence because I want to squeeze in another subject. I want Ivan to close it.
I fail to understand, because first of all we must understand the budgets we work within. Yes, we could do better.
The one who has invited 100 presidents.
We could do.
Then don't start saying budgets.
For example, Oscar, Entebbe Expressway and all the way up to Mnyonyo, isn't that preparedness? Right?
No, just that.
No, we didn't have it during CHOGM. Now we have it. Don't we have power around? So when you talk,
they've even put lights.
So you can talk of a few operational issues.
What's of the convention center?
Yes, of a few challenges. Don't we have an airport now? So really, for me, we should not downgrade every effort that has been made.
Katesh, yes. I'd say take his advice and remove.
No, I agree.
Yes.
I take his advice, but what I think is that preparedness is just looking at it as if it is an event.
Ivan,
Oscar, I think the problem people are having with Malcolm is the fact that he's distinguishing himself as a fault finder. In the sense that even when he wants
that one we usually leave to Nafi. Not Malcolm.
Okay. So that's the problem.
That bucket is with Nafka.
Yes, but now for me, I think one of the major things, one of the biggest takeaways from this is the sort of public relations rehabilitation of Uganda. Because prior to this conference, especially after the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act, the advisories and then the sanctions by the US government, one after the other, by about some members of public officials in Uganda, the narrative was sort of that Uganda is increasingly becoming a pariah state in public affairs on the international scene. But to be able to host 4 successive big conferences in a space of a month is a public relations score for Uganda. And for me, actually, my only concern is that I think that Uganda undermines itself on this function. I think that if it was another country, in terms of the campaigning, the communication, all the communication around these summits and all these conferences and all, would be much bigger. The public. Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, so you would have the public mobilization around these.
Even Nafi and Mark, I agree with you.
Yes.
And Mark would see it better.
Yeah, exactly. The public mobilization around to buy in, to understand this conference, to understand the opportunities, to sort of, like you were saying, when you're preparing like for Christmas, so you have a big function coming in, the entire family, and at least everybody is in the know.
We clear the fridge where the beef is going to come. It is ready.
Even the people
not
on
to
the
have
street,
a beef has come and is now nowhere.
On the street now, on the street, everybody would hear that sort of vibe of saying we have all these big guests coming in.
Ivan, I have to tell you,
I
have to tell you, the expressway has lights now. Chigo Road has lights. So we are benefiting.
Yeah, but I think that the public, the public buy-in the sense of.
No, Moses is in Buziga.
In the sense that, for example, now.
But just a small interest. Moses, what Ivan should be saying, if I say we are going to put the lights because the speakers are where presidents are, then we say great, put the lights there.
Even you see what I'm saying, even the adverts, the sort of billboards, the sort of campaigns on the Kampala roads, on the highways, and things like that, because these are really big. If you have over 100 guests coming in and that campaigning, you're mobilizing the public to tap opportunities. So
when you said billboards, I knew Nafi would put up a hand.
These events. So I think that Uganda finally has an opportunity for us to present its case to the world, and the president, at least this is a personal credit in terms of mobilizing or at least articulating the case for the global south and for the developing nations and the need for them to coalesce together. He has been doing it for a while. So there is no more fit. Someone more fit to.
We have 7 minutes, and I want us to talk about AFCON. And I'm going to post a question here on AFCON because that's another big event coming. And I'm going to on X, formerly Twitter, and ask people what is the team that shall win. But before that, Moses, Mike in Kampala has told you, stick to issues you know about. Leave those trading dollars alone. And Uganda shilling on the 5th of January was 369.2.9. 12th January 3794.88. And it says, Moses, you can read these things from the BOU website. Karamaji Frederick on X says, Mr. Biaruhanga. Let me read the thing. Let me read. Exactly. Mr. Biaruhanga, the dollar is at its highest rate in a year from 2023.
But Moses said after these conferences, he didn't even say.
But Ivan, I told you I have running arguments with him on PDM and Forex bureaus.
But I still stand by my position that in Africa, Uganda's currency has
in terms of current stability
stabilized against foreign currency.
That's not where we went to Forex bureaus. That's don't now.
Secondly, if you compare Ugandan shilling against the Kenyan shilling, Ugandan shilling has become stronger than Kenyan shilling. That's a fact. If you compare Ugandan shilling against the pound,
let's leave it. We have run out of time. We are only contesting your dollar thing. The comment, but you have now enlarged it. Only the dollar. Only the dollar. No, these people are the ones who have raised it. Only the dollar. But so I was saying, I'm going to post on X, formerly Twitter. Today I'm going to post and say, for me this time I'm choosing Senegal. And in the year we are hosting, I will choose Uganda. So, Abdu, you start off because Uganda we are hosting. Why can't we win that tournament?
And why not now?
We are not there.
Thank you.
So you and I watch a lot of football. Who are you choosing?
I don't know, but really it is Senegal.
You have to. Okay, you are Senegal. People are listening. Now, if you also organize yourself, you're going to have to choose.
Naf is going to say Chagwe. That's the problem.
Moses, we are going around the table. Who are you choosing? Hold on. Who are you choosing? AFCON kickoff today. Who are you choosing?
Cameroon.
Okay. Patricia is going to note all these choices. Katesh, Go to the microphone.
Mane has just married.
Of course, Senegal.
Sadio
Senegal.
Mane.
So we have
Sadio
three
Mane has
Senegal.
just wedded. Really, this should be a proper wedding gift
Yes,
for
wings.
Senegal.
Hey, Malcolm, who are you choosing? Malcolm,
because Sadio Mane's loyalties might be divided at this point in time.
Yeah.
I will go with Ghana.
Ghana. So we have Senegal, Ghana, Cameroon. Namfi?
Senegal.
Wow, 4 Senegals. Ivan,
He's not in Africa.
yes.
And for the bride.
Ivan?
Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay, why? You say some.
He's an Arsenal fan.
Being in the history of the tourists, of the tourists.
So Cote d'Ivoire. So but it's a big tournament. Pardon, Nafi, I missed what you're saying. Speak on microphone, Nafi. It's a big tournament, and lately it's been getting better publication. Better recommendations, and we look forward to watching it. And then maybe we'll make a list, Malcolm, so that Ivan does not accuse you of fault finding. Maybe you'll make a list. And Honorable Magogo is one of our regular visitors here. So we should be prepared. Look at how they're doing these things. And of course, Abdu, the challenge of when a host goes out early.
Yes. Yeah, but you see, I think to look at it in a little bit wider perspective, Africa as a continent, there's something we should now be proud of, and that's sports. We arrived at the world stage, and no part of this world can now ignore us, especially in football. The African boys are doing very well in Europe, and if they can come back here, we can have really very, very we can become very, very competitive as a continent. On that one, the continent the trajectory is showing positives.
The Chitende Stadium, I would recommend I go there with you, Abdul, as we prepare for AFCON in Uganda. It is really doing very well. So Ivan, power of AFCON. We are closing out the program. Maybe let me trust only you to conclude.
Well, I think that.
Are you bribing him because he gave you back at the seat?
or maybe I'll ask Katesh to conclude.
AFCON is a big opportunity, and I like that. Uganda is reading. I think we've seen the rehabilitation, for example, at Nambole. I think there is some work at Nachivo Stadium. I think it still has issues with the parking and accessibility and all. But I think that's towards 2027 when we are.
Because I'm a football supporter.
When we are hosting, we should be more ready. I liked specifically the fact that traffic management around the city now with the Kampala flyover project. And the pedestrian movements and all. I think we are reading ourselves as a serious country in terms of infrastructure capacity to host these big events and tournaments and become a touristic country, because infrastructure is at the core of this your attractiveness as a
before you go, Fuka was making a big point about Nambole. There is too much, maybe she speaks with herself, rubbish.
There's rubbish. I
it's a dump site.
It's a dump site. There is a lot of,
as you go.
And then the back end road after the railroad. I've asked Moses, why don't they do it? Because
Abdu,
it's
you
an
have
alternative
spoiled
to
the
main
conclusion
road.
If we cannot point this out, they can't be corrected.
We complain, like Baganda say, nantabulirirwa yasabalagwa bomba.
Right.
A person who doesn't take advice or criticism will always make rookie mistakes. So what I'm saying is, for
clean
us
up.
We clean up before. Look at the situation today. We are cleaning up on the day the visitors are coming. The mess at the airport,
I told you,
because
Abdul,
we
now.
are doing it at the last moment. So we need to do this. If it's in 2027,
I'm going to talk to Peter.
we
I'm
start
going to talk
cleaning
to Honorable
today.
Gwang for sure, because he's a very
And Moses,
active
can we
man.
do that back
He's
and forth?
I'm going to talk to Honorable Gwang about this
Yes.
now. I promise you.
Okay. Katesh. Katesh.
That is not in Nambole Stadium. It's outside the stadium.
As you go.
Where I say,
Ivan. Now you say I live in the same country with Moses. Moses?
Instead, you should talk.
I live in the same country with Moses? How?
To the mayor. Kira municipality. No, it's in Kira. Wait, no, I said it is in Kira municipality.
So, Katesh.
Represented by Honorable.
Thank you, Moses.
Semuju.
Thank you, Moses.
The idea should be talk to the mayor
and
the MP.
Let me get Katesh to conclude.
I think.
Only your microphone is on, Katesh.
For me, I think we are going. The point is noted, and I think Honorable Abdu has offered to talk to the Minister of Sports. But I think the big thing we should not. We should look at the big thing. The competition that is starting. Obviously, after that, we are the hosts. So it is an opportunity for us, first of all, to learn,
take notes,
and get prepared. But secondly, even as the games go on, Uganda is going to be known that it is going to be the host. Probably in the next, before the next competition, we will have pre-matches, friendly games, maybe being held here. So I think for me, I'm looking at the next, 4 years. 4 or so years as an opportunity for us to double our numbers, to get in as more people. The process has started. We are not starting numbering now. We are, the process has been going on. So I think we will be better prepared.
Thank you so much, listeners of the Capital Gang. Thank you, Star Cafe for powering gang. Performance has been good. Abdu has been missing. As soon as he walked in, a little bit late, he has attacked properly. It was not one. It was not one. I'll even report you to Dr. Kasenene because the way you swallowed those sausages. So thank you, Mega Yogurt. Yes. And we wish you a happy weekend. Enjoy the conferences. AFCON is also starting. Please make sure you watch a match. I am Oscar Semoyamsoke, and I shall see you next week. In the break, we are going to get Namfi and Moses, and we shall see how it ends.